convey. And in these last days, you see how the Middle East and the area surrounding it is now about to blow up. You got Syria going off, Bahrain, you got Egypt already overthrew their dictator. You got Libya, and you got the United States in the hands everywhere.
Right.
So what it is that I want to convey is this one thing here that I almost brought up at the last time I got a chance to speak. I spoke not long about the abomination of desolation. Significant piece of prophecy that gets left out of normal everyday worship. And the congregation, I feel, needs to know certain things about what's going to happen. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't been to Israel. And the only thing that I can tell you is what I've seen on YouTube, newspaper clippings. But I know the brother that you live in Jerusalem, so you might be able to shed some light on what I'm about to say. At this present time, the Ashkenazis are trying to rebuild the temple, or rebuild a temple.
Hallelujah.
Right. It's a facsimile, of course. All the vestures that they have, all the garments, the priestly garments, they have these things made already. And for the first time since we left the land in 70 AD, someone is trying to construct a temple to so-called praise Yahweh. This significant piece of history has to be talked about because there is an event that is going to coincide or is going to happen, which will be a tell-all sign towards the end time and towards several other things, like the regathering, like us going back home, like us being redeemed and sealed and restored. So I would like everyone to please turn to Mark, the 13th chapter. Those of us that don't have our swords of the Spirit, Brother Holden will be escorting you off the premises. Everybody should have their sword of the Spirit. Mark, the 13th chapter and the 14th verse. We're going to go through the Olivet Discourse, which the disciples said, or they asked, what will be the tell sign of the end of the age, and the sign of that second coming. Mark, the 13th chapter, and I want to focus on verse 14. And it reads on this wise. But when you shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, standing where it ought not, let him that readeth understand.
That's right.
Then let them that be in Judea flee to the mountains. Now, what is the abomination of desolation that Daniel spoke of? That is standing where it ought not. That's the question that has to be asked, and I want to put you on hold, and we want to go to the next gospel, which is Luke, the 21st chapter, and we want to go to the 20th verse, because we're going to set something up here. In Mark, we said that the abomination of desolation is standing where it ought not.
Very significant.
That's significant. It's standing where it ought not. That's in the book of Mark. In the book of Luke, the 21st chapter. Luke, the 21st chapter, and the 20th verse. And it reads like this. And when you shall see Jerusalem compassed with armies, then know the desolation thereof is nigh, or near. So now we've got the desolation. When we see the armies compassed around Jerusalem, we know that the desolation is near. But Mark told you that when you see the desolation, know that this is happening. Let's go back to Mark real quick. Mark told you it's something that Matthew didn't tell you. Mark says when you shall see the abomination of desolation, and Luke told you that when you see the armies compassed around about, that lets you know that the desolation is near. So now you've got you have the time of the desolation, and now you know where the place of it is in the holy place. Now,
where it ought not.
Where it ought not be, and that's the key thing. And in order to understand this scripture, we have to go back to Daniel the prophet, of course, but we also have to refer back to our history. Let us refer back to history. Alexander the Great, the third beast of the third empire, to rise up on the scene, had 4 generals that took over after after he died. This is found in Daniel, the 8th chapter.
Right.
For brevity's sake, I'm going to just explain it to you.
Right.
After his death, Alexander the Great, his 4 generals, Cassander, Lysicamus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, divided his kingdom up into 4 parts.
That's right.
The part that's going to pertain to our history is this king Seleucus, who had a descendant by the name of Antiochus Epiphanes.
Right.
Antiochus Epiphanes means manifestation of God on earth or God on earth, however as you want to put it. Anyway, Antiochus Epiphanes is the prototype, okay, for the person who is going to sit in this temple that the Jews are building. Let me give you some history from the book of Maccabees, and I got to divide this up because it's very long. This book, a lot of brothers don't believe in the book of Maccabees, and I understand why, but it's fine. But when you look at it compared to how it fits into Daniel, it's kind of hard to deny what's written. It says, Alexander the Macedon, son of Philip, had come from the land of Kittim, and defeated Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, whom he succeeded as ruler. That was history. Alexander the Great whooped on the Persian Empire in 3 successive battles with only 60,000 men, and was outnumbered in all 3 battles by 290,000 men, and won every battle. Now, here we go. He summoned his comrades at his death, who had been bought with him from his youth, and divided his kingdom among them while he was still alive. Alexander had reigned 12 years when he died. Each of his comrades himself reigned in his own region. All assumed crowns after his death. They and their heirs after them for many years brought increasing calamity upon the world.
Right.
And they brought it through Hellenization.
There it is, bro. Yeah.
Am I right?
There it is, absolutely.
Hellenization, which many of our people fell prey to. What is Hellenization? Hellenization was Alexander's plot to put Greek culture and replace everybody's culture with Greek culture. See? And they infused Greek thought with everybody else's religion, or with everybody else's faith, or with everybody else's culture. Nobody else's culture mattered. The only culture that mattered was Alexander the Great. And his 4 generals succeeded in carrying out that plot, or carrying out that plan. It didn't stop at Alexander's death. It went all the way through until Rome came along. So look here. Let's get back to what my man's saying. From these 3 grew a sinful offshoot, Antiochus Epiphanes, son of King Antiochus, once a hostage in Rome. He became king in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. It was then that there emerged from Israel a set of renegades who led many people astray. Come, they said, let us reach an understanding with the pagans surrounding around us. Let us reach an understanding with the pagans. For since we separated ourselves from them, many misfortunes have overtaken us. Since we have separated from the pagans, many misfortunes have overtaken us. This proposal proved acceptable, and a number of the people eagerly approached the king, who authorized them to practice the pagan observances. They allowed us to be as wicked as they were. They allowed us to worship the same pagan gods that they did. Integration, exactly. So they built a gymnasium in Jerusalem.
Look out, boy.
They built a gymnasium in Jerusalem such as the pagans have, disguised their circumcision, abandoned the Holy Covenant, submitted to the heathen rule as willing slaves of impiety.
Yeah.
Willing slaves of impiety. Once Antiochus had seen his authority established, he determined to make himself king of Egypt. So now he's going to take over the Egyptians. He invaded Egypt in massive strength with chariots and elephants and a great fleet. He engaged Ptolemy, his other former general, his descendants, and he took over Egypt. Look at what he said after he did that. He came back in the days past, and 2 years the king, through the cities of Judah, sent messages with an impressive force saying, what happened in peaceful works will no longer happen again. He gained their confidence, then suddenly he fell on the city, dealing it a terrible blow, and destroyed many of the Israelites. He pillaged the city, he set it on fire, and what's most important is that Antiochus and his army surrounded Jerusalem from 168 to 165 BC. It was a almost 3.5 year siege, where they destroyed the temple and where Antiochus did his worst work. And this is why it's so important that we understand our history. On the 25th of December,
There you go.
on the 25th of December, Antiochus Epiphanes broke into the temple. He sacrificed a pig on the altar.
Yeah, that's right.
And what's most important is that he took the statue of Jupiter from Greece and set it in the same place where Ezekiel saw his vision of the image of jealousy.
Yeah.
Let me say that again. He erected a statue, which was the statue of Jupiter, which is now called St. Peter's statue in Rome, in the Basilica. That is the statue of Jupiter, or Zeus, or whoever you want to call it, which they proclaim to be St. Peter. However, that same image was in the same place where Ezekiel's vision, in Ezekiel the 8th chapter, where you see the image of jealousy. That image of jealousy was transferred to Antiochus Epiphanes, where he put the statue of Jupiter in the inner court in the front of the temple of the altar.
All right now.
Then he sacrificed the pig and the swine. Then he proclaimed himself to be God and wanted the people to worship him. What is the issue with that? That's why the Maccabees rose up to throw out the Greeks, re-cleanse the temple, establish the temple worship the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
See?
They
did it the right way, the Maccabees. So many of the people, that is every apostate from the law, rallied to them and so committed every evil in the country. Our people went along with it. A lot of times our people went right along with it, and there's only a few, a remnant, that always resisted. Always a few, and it only took a few. And that few, like Brother James said, those few ended up rebuilding the nation. Those few people ended up reestablishing the way that Yah wanted us to live upon the face of the earth.
Right.
So I want to take us to Daniel the 8th chapter so we can see exactly how this prophecy was written in Maccabees fits into the scriptures. Because see, this thing is going to happen again.
Yep. Tell us how.
And I'm going to tell you how.
I want to hear the how.
It's going to happen again.
Yep.